All right, it's the Chris Michael Show for Atlantis Thursday. This is the show that seems to get quite a bit more views and listens than other shows. I'm trying to do this without the normal camera because there seems to be some kind of problem when I use my camera. So this is a simple laptop camera. We're trying to even this out if you are watching this. Okay, so I had a couple of comments. Jordan, no zombies, more like most taking a dirt nap. Whoever said it's a great time to be alive is lucky I don't live next door to them. Well, Jordan, and she also says, I am a woman, by the way. Jordan, I don't know what it's like to live next door to you, but I do like the fact that you listen to the Chris Michaels show, and I will say this. Wherever you see this face, you've got a place to sit. The next comment, I love you, showman. What books on Atlantis are you referencing? I'm looking into this stuff. Definitely want to look up past and current deportations from presidents for the last 40 years. Yes, so presidents like to deport people often. Millions of people. I think the average over the last three presidents, which you have to assume is 2 terms each, so 8 years, was about 5 million people per president. So you can extrapolate the data from there. And so you've got Donald Trump, 2 terms, non-consecutive, and he's deported a fraction of the people. And I'm still starting to go down this road where Donald Trump is kind of a Trojan horse president. He seems beholden to other interests that do not involve the best for America. So we'll see what happens. And finally, Jennifer, they are so stupid. They can't win unless they control speech. They aren't as smart as they think. Jennifer commenting on the hyper elites over in everywhere, every agency, because as you know, the power elite and the deep state, they do not like us thinking for ourselves. So they must control language and speech. Interesting factoid, Jennifer. Your comment has suffered from the same thing that my reach being obliviated on X is also suffering from. Spotify has determined that the word they is a dog whistle. So it is being censored. You cannot show your comment, or at least I was notified that your comment will not be shown because they is being considered something icky that could lead to nefarious things. So bear in mind, everybody, do not throw the word they around without a care. A lot of people have been asking me about Edgar Casey and Atlantis and the channelings that I read. The book that I am using, I found in a used bookstore. Let's see what the copyright on this is. You know, it's all that yellow type of paper. March of 68. So quite an old book. Edgar Casey on Atlantis by Edgar Casey, but edited by Hugh Lynn Casey. So this is not the end all be all of the Atlantis channelings that Edgar Casey has given. You can go over to, I forgot the name of it, but Edgar Casey has a, or at least the estate of Edgar Casey has all of those channelings up there. I'm not sure if you have to subscribe to something or what, but what I'm reading you is a sliver of what's really there. So we'll continue along. I'll ride this out. It'll be like I'm reading a story to you from my book, and we'll see what I come up with. So now, in last we left off, here we go. In Poseidia, in Atlantean land, a time of development of electrical forces that dealt with transportation of craft from place to place, photographing at a distance, reading inscriptions through walls, even at a distance, overcoming gravity itself. Preparation of the crystal, the terrible, mighty crystal. Much of this brought destruction. And in Atlantean land, before the second destruction, when there was a dividing of islands, when the temptations were begun in activities of sons of Belial and children of Law of One. entity amongst those that interpreted the messages received through crystals and the fires that were to be the eternal fires of nature. Okay, so with this, you're seeing that the transportation angle with all of this. So the Atlanteans were able to transport themselves, goods, thoughts, energy across vast distances. And they were able to essentially bend the three-dimensional realm, at least from our perspective, in ways that we can't naturally do unless we are trained. So you're talking about astral projection and so on and so forth. You don't get those gifts bestowed upon you unless you're of a certain moral character. I mean, you can cheat the system, which is where psychedelics come in, Luciferianism, and all that kind of thing. But there would be a repercussion with all of that if you were to try to cheat the system. So now he's also referencing preparation of the crystal, the terrible, mighty crystal. Much of this brought destruction. So he's referencing the two-eye stone, the two-eye crystal over here. If you ever listen to Dark Journalist on YouTube, Daniel talks about that often over there. But essentially, what you're trying to find out here is that this crystal was responsible for one of those stages of destruction of Atlantis. Remember, Atlantis didn't just sink during Plato's account of it 10,000 years ago, 12,000 years ago, whatever it was. It sank in stages, and the civilization was hundreds of thousands of years in the making. I would even contend it was millions of years in the making, especially when you start to consider that not all of mankind's history was on the physical plane. You have to get into occultism and theosophy and all that stuff if you go down that road, which I tend to do. Nothing else makes sense. If you ever read any of Dolores Cannon's work, particularly about the convoluted universe, you start to realize that, hey, wait a minute. This can't be all that is. I mean, this just seems like I've been shortchanged if you're telling me that this is it. It's got to be something else going on here. So, reincarnation plays into it, but also this idea that the two-eye stone, the two-eye crystal, is all powerful, and it's not necessarily something that was controlled and used in the correct fashion. I believe in another channeling of Edgar Cayce's that we've read, they just decided to try and use the two-eye crystal in a way that would destroy or keep the bestial kingdoms, the animal kingdoms at bay from Atlantean civilization. So what that means is they went on a purge, and Edgar Cayce references dinosaurs. So dinosaurs and reptilian-like species were overrunning the hinterland, and the Atlanteans felt threatened by it, and so that's what you get with that. About the Firestone, Edgar Cayce says, the entity's activities then made such applications as dealt both with the constructive and the destructive forces in the period. So he's referencing that this person he's channeling for was able to use the two-eye stone in both positive and negative ways. And he describes in the center of the building would be lined with non-conductive stones, something akin to asbestos, and other non-conductors, such as are now being manufactured under a name which is well known. The building above the stone was oval or a dome, a portion for rolling back, so that the activity of the stars, the concentration of energies that emanate from bodies that are on fire themselves, along with the elements that are found and not found in the Earth's atmosphere. So he's not talking about people spontaneously combusting here. He's saying that essentially this stone, the Firestone, was in a building that was dome-like in shape. Almost, and the image that I get when I read that is a Greco-Roman style building. You see the dome and you got the opening. I mean, if you look into architecture or art history, you see this kind of thing. I mean, it's not very uncommon, especially if you're looking at ancient ancient buildings and so on. It's a very common architectural style and type. It's also one of the strongest. But when he says that it is the portion for rolling back, so the activity of the stars, the concentration of energies that emanate from bodies that are on fire themselves. So he's talking about essentially being able to channel the energies from the stars. So you're talking about astrotheology, you're talking about astrology, you're talking about that there are certain windows of time and certain cycles that can only be accessed when certain stars and constellations are aligned in certain ways. And they still use this kind of energy today. I mean, look at Donald Trump. Every time he tries to do something that is of a significant portion to himself when it comes to policies or wars, he always does it on a full moon or a new moon, or when a constellation is suddenly in view, or when a planet goes direct or indirect. Everything he does is lined up astrologically. So they still use this kind of thing today. And when they say the bodies that are on fire themselves, that could go in a number of directions. You can talk about how the bodies that are on fire, they're not literal fires. It's passion ridden. Okay. That you have to go back to the humors of mankind and the passions and so on. I mean, one of the ways that passions were explored or at least conveyed in art history was back in the Greco-Romans. If you look at the statue of David, it's always covered up. The PP, or if you look at other statues, the men do not look very well endowed. And that is to signify that they have overcome their ability to be controlled by nature itself and the more bestial aspects of mankind. So I don't know if you can hear this, but the four-footed producer here is snoozing away. And he's just insufferable. I'm not sure if you hear that in my microphone, but he's sawing logs right next to me, and I can't get over it. It's distracting. So anyway, he continues by saying that instruments which were connected with the various modes of travel through induction methods, which were made much the same character of control as would in the present day be termed remote control through radio vibrations. The building was constructed so that when the dome was rolled back, there might be little or no hindrance in the direct application of power to various crafts that were to be impelled through space, whether directed under water or under other elements or through other elements. And amongst those who directed the influences of the aircraft were lifted by the gases of the period, or whether guided for the more of pleasure vehicles that would pass along close to the earth, or crafts on the water or under the water. So this crystal was able to be used to power any kind of vehicle, anywhere, able to drive through or navigate through any medium, or through a medium, like through a mountain. So that's how powerful this is. And it's able to emanate through every aspect of the earth plane. So it also had to be rolled back. So think of a dome, think of a stadium. So that's what you're dealing with here. Now, he doesn't explain how it's rolled back, at least in what I've read. It doesn't explain how it's rolled back. So if it's a massive stone structure, I'd like to know how that dome opened up and closed. I mean, was it there with some kind of magnetic force? But he references specifically radiation and also the rays that were invisible to the eye. I mean, this sounds a lot like a directed energy weapon with what we would call it today, doesn't it? So once again, you have to consider that ancient technologies are really a lot more advanced than what we're used to dealing with. And also, potentially, a lot of these wars that we're dealing with right now are ways to try and get that technology back. So moving along, The active forces of these that the entity brought, destructive forces by setting up in various portions of the land to produce powers of the various forms of the people's activities in the cities, towns, and countries surrounding the same. These, not intentionally, were tuned too high and brought the second period of destructive forces. So it's important to realize what's happening here. Okay. This crystal and these people were able to siphon off the energy of the citizens themselves and channel that energy into the crystal. And they were also able to tune the crystals so that it would emit a certain level of energy. They would increase it or dampen it or whatever to use however they see fit. So quite literally, it appears as though that these people were being used as batteries. And now there's a whole big esoteric side to that kind of concept, because if you're using people as batteries and they're not observing their life in a most altruistic way where they are of a certain metaphysical character, then you're going to run into all kinds of problems because they are more vice ridden. Their energy is more mundane, more animalistic, more bestial than it would be if they were coming from a source of enlightenment. So naturally, at least in my point of view, you would get this whole idea that, yeah, sure, you can use people as batteries, but you're not controlling them. You don't know what's going to go in, what's going to go out. I mean, a simple way to observe this kind of thing is if you've ever slept with anybody, if you have a couple of notches in your bedposts, if you've slept with somebody, you generally pick up on their energy. And men do it in a certain way and women do it in a certain way. But for all intents and purposes, when you sleep with somebody, you pick up on that energy. It's the same concept here. Not that I'm saying that all the Atlanteans were orgasming every time they wanted to tune this crystal, but I'm saying that the energy of a person can be transferred, felt, and picked up on. So the next bit, through the same form of fire, the bodies of individuals were regenerated by burning through application of rays from the stone. The influences that brought destructive forces to the animal organism. Hence, the body often rejuvenated itself, and it remained in that land until the eventual destruction. Joining with the peoples who made for the breaking up of the land, or joining with Belial at the final destruction of the land. In this, the entity was lost. Interesting, right? So they were keeping people's physical aspects. They were regenerating them. Certainly sounds like mummification, doesn't it? Sounds like they had a way of allowing a spirit to inject itself into a physical form. And also, they were aligned with the sons of Belial. So, a more vice ridden style of culture in the Atlantean culture. This, which would today be extrapolated as the Luciferians, the satanic, and all the rest, right? I'm not saying that that's what it is, but you get that kind of connotation that I'm trying to convey here. And what you're almost looking at here is a way for the sons of Belial to bypass spiritual progression. And how do I mean this? The concept of reincarnation, you do as much as you can in the three-dimensional form, die, reincarnate, try to do as much as you can, and back and forth until you progress, so you finally learn these lessons. The sons of Belial seem to be trying to bypass that. They seem to want to retain the memories of prior lifetimes, retain the memories of what they had, their knowledge from across the veil, and allow them to incarnate into a physical form So remembering all of their past lessons to bypass the need to forget when you're born. If you know everything, then what kind of test is it? Part of the experience on a three-dimensional human plane is to forget everything and learn lessons and kind of be in the dark. With the sons of Belial, it appears, they don't want to do that. It means that they are trying to progress in ways that would bypass a natural progression. I mean, how many times have we seen that? Even today, how many times have we seen that? Um, look at what was going on with COVID. I mean, you can make plenty of connections with that. Now, I'm trying to determine whether or not I want to share with you a channeling that I did a long time ago, or should I continue along here? Um, let's do. Oh, this is juicy. This is too much. All right, so we'll go here. I'll do a channeling. I'll do the channeling next time. So we find at least a description of what appears to be a giant laser or a magnetic bottling situation. Magnetic bottling is fascinating if you ever get to research any of it. I'll tell you what, the four-footed producer here is really burning my ass with this snoring. Hey, dude, bro, stop doing that. All right, here we go. As a description of the manner of construction of the stone, talking about the firestone, we find it was a large cylindrical glass cut with facets in such manner that the capstone on top was made for centralizing the power or force that concentrated between the end of the cylinder and the capstone itself. The records as to ways of constructing same are in three places on the earth or in the earth as it stands today. In the sunken portion of Atlantis or Poseidia, where a portion of the temples may yet be discovered under the slime of ages of seawater near what is known as Bimini, off the coast of Florida. And secondly, in the temple records that were in Egypt, and now what is known as the Yucatan in America, where these stones are now, during the last few months, being uncovered. In Yucatan, there is an emblem of the same. And for they will be brought to this America in these United States. A portion is to be carried, as we find, to the Pennsylvania State Museum. A portion is to be carried to the Washington preservations of such findings, or to Chicago. Now, this is a channeling that was done back in December of 1933. So what he's basically saying here is that there were multiple records, multiple crystals, some of them off the coast of Florida in Bimini, some in the Yucatan, some in Egypt. It's no surprise to anybody that does any kind of research that there would be these locations that has this kind of knowledge. Now, what's also interesting with all of this is that there is the Bimini Road. If you ever do any kind of research on that, it's a bunch of blocks that are submerged underwater, perfect angles, all the rest that you would see. They look anomalous and they just lead off into nowhere. You know, Yucatan, you've got the Mayans and all of that, and then in Egypt, obviously, you've got the pyramids and countless other relics that are buried beneath the sands. It is no surprise to me that these plans and these crystals would attempt to be found, and this is where the dark journalist makes a lot of good points. He talks about the hot zone being basically the Caribbean. And in the Caribbean, if you're working there for the government, if you're part of a government or a contractor, Daniel says that you have to have signed an NDA to not talk about what you find beneath the waters. So why would they do that? Specifically for the Caribbean. Then you have to also factor in what was discovered about, 15 years ago, back in 2010-ish. There was, off the northwest coast of Cuba, a supposed submerged temple complex that looks strikingly like Mayan ruins, but it's underneath the water. Now, you have to go down the road that I usually go down, which is the fact that most of these wars today, most of this real politic that we're seeing in Venezuela, the Ukraine, and now soon to be Cuba, if little narco Rubio has his way, has to do with ancient structures, ancient technologies, and they are trying to come across these items. They're trying to retrieve these items. For what reason, we don't know. But we can make assumptions here or there. And I still think that is what's really going on. I mean, why else would you invade Iraq unless you're looking at something in Babylon or something even more close to the border of Iran? Interesting stuff. That's Edgar Casey Thursday. A little late, but that's okay. I am exhausted. I'll be back next week. Next week, maybe I won't do so much of the reading. Maybe I'll regale you with the channelings that I've done in the past and what I've discovered on my own regarding Atlantis. And there are a lot of similarities between then and now. And I don't think you'll get a lot of people to talk about that, but it's always good anyway. So that's going to be it for me. Enjoy your weekend, everybody. It's Chris Michael's show. Another interview is on the way, so look out for that too. I will see you next week, and do not forget to enjoy your weekend and be the beautiful, lovable fuzzball that I am. Until next week, everybody.